What's up? Today we are talking about something that somehow flew under my radar. A long forgotten early 90s MTV show called The Idiot Box. And going back to dwelling on how I somehow never heard about this show, it baffles me because, talk about my fucking wheelhouse. Not only is it early 90s, which I'm sure you can gather I'm a little bit obsessed with, but also early 90s MTV, which, at the time, MTV and Nickelodeon kind of were the 90s, and they were a big part of my life. And also, it was made by Tom Stern, Tim Burns, and Alex Winter. He's the guy you'll probably know best from Bill and Ted. But also, they're the guys who made Freaked, which is a beautiful, beautiful film. And one I love. And so, I'm just kind of baffled as to how I've never heard of this, how it's not more well known. I mean, I've talked to a few people who also haven't heard of it. So yeah, it's crazy. But then recently, Severin put it out on Blu-ray, and thank God they did. And it's kind of like a skit show, basically. I think, from what I gather from Voltar, who we'll get to later, they showed music videos in between the segments, because the episodes are only about 11 minutes long. And the show only got 6 episodes, which is really a crime. I think the reason, though, is because it was a little bit ahead of its time in terms of the kind of stuff that MTV would be known for just 5 years later, maybe. And just in general, going forward, even into the 2000s and Adult Swim and shit, and that type of humor. This, alongside of Kids in the Hall, were probably the earliest forms of this kind of self-aware, gratuitous humor and pushing the envelope in terms of what you can get away with on TV. I mean, it's like a parody. There you are, breaking the fourth wall, and skits are bleeding together in ways that I don't think anybody had done up to that point. This is probably the first show, honestly, that did that kind of shit. Where you'll have something in one skit, and then in the next skit, it'll get referenced. That's kind of what I mean by the skits bleeding together and shit. And on top of that, it just has the whole Gen X, assault on the senses, surreal abstract aesthetic going for it. And every show is kind of hosted by Alex Winter, and he's usually getting maimed or disfigured or doing something really stupid. And a lot of the skits are mindless, but there's always that underlying satire going on. And honestly, it's not even that particularly offensive. Maybe one or two, but for the most part, from my binge of these 6 episodes, a lot of it isn't that offensive. It's mainly just unhinged, really demented. Everything is a twisted version of PSAs, commercials, and television shows. Alex is usually doing some weird shit, trying to kill a cat or strapping a bomb to his head or something like that. And there's tons of little things, they do an Evil Dead homage in one of the episodes that's really well done. I think the perfect example of kind of the satire of commercials is one for Reebok shoes, which I think is really funny because it's kind of showing the absurdity of some of the products, shoes with pumps on them, and kind of exaggerates that to show where it'll be if it stays on that trajectory where it's just got electronics attached to it. And aside from that, it's got a bunch of stuff of its time. One episode they're making fun of Sinead O'Connor, who I think was at that time in the early 90s, the butt of every joke. I don't think you can find a skit show running at that time that didn't make fun of Sinead O'Connor at some point. I remember them even making fun of her in Animaniacs, or was it Tiny Toons? One of those two. I think Tiny Toons, actually. But there's also a lot of really good ideas in here. One in particular, this guy putting on a show while he's at work at a gas station using the security cameras, which I think is really funny. But not only that, it's kind of like reminiscent of Clerks a little bit, which was 3 years later. I'm not going to say that Kevin Smith got the idea from that. I think it's just the black and white static camera on a gas station counter that's giving it that. But, you know, it's a really funny idea. This dude is just like hosting a talk show from behind the counter, and then he has guests and shit, and you see interactions with customers. That's the kind of stuff this show is doing that I think is sad it didn't get more episodes and more seasons to flesh out. You also have Voltar, the future of TV announcing, who is just this like digital man with like a computer generated voice that kind of recaps. That's kind of weird. That's probably the worst part of the show. I don't know how it played on MTV. I'd like to find a like VHS rip of how it actually played on MTV. I looked a little bit and couldn't find one, unfortunately. But yeah, but it is kind of like when you're watching it here, it's kind of like a stop in the action where Voltar just kind of talks to you about the episode that you just watched. And despite it being like a hang up in the pacing of the show, I think it's like it by itself works, and it probably played a lot better when it aired because it wasn't just like in quick succession. It was broken up with commercials and music videos. And on top of all that, you get cameos like Ricky Lake, Flea, the kid from T2.
I was the one who siphoned the blood out of the dog.
Not least of all, fucking Guar. They have like a great Guar skit.
Send in your postcards today and you could win the chance to sacrifice your daughter to Guar.
Probably one of the highlights of the whole show for me. And the effects. You know, I'm a big effects guy. I love practical effects, and just like the opening alone, this stop motion, like you're not even sure what the fuck's going on intro. And you know, all the segments where Alex is getting fucked up, they always come up with like a cool effect. You know, I feel like in terms of like stuff that belongs in the like spotlight for 90s shit, this deserves to be up there. Like, you know, I kind of live in this like carefully constructed 90s bubble most of the time where I just watch like old trash movies or shit like Beavis and Butthead, Ren and Stimpy, and this fits like right in there to the point that I feel like it should have been there all along. It was so ahead of its time. Again, like all the shit they were doing with like breaking the fourth wall, the kind of like cynical, jaded, chaotic kind of style that it's like packaged in. It's just such a beautiful thing. And I feel like hopefully with it being like out there, at least on physical media, maybe soon it'll pop up somewhere on streaming. It almost feels like MTV still doesn't want to like claim it, oddly. You know, I think normally whenever a company does that, it's because they're worried about something being offensive, and there is some offensive stuff, you know, like the Flying Gimp skit, which is kind of across every episode, could be taken as a little bit insensitive maybe. But for the most part, it wasn't always shit like that. I think the big problem with this at the time is kind of like the same, because this is right in the same general time period as like the Beavis and Butthead frog baseball controversy, if you remember that. Like my mom fell for that shit. I remember I had to sneak watching Beavis and Butthead when I was a kid because she had heard that it was causing kids to do fucked up stupid shit. And this show definitely is focused on that. Most of the wraparound segments with Alex Winters are him doing something stupid, like putting weights on himself and trying to walk across the bottom of a swimming pool. Like it's like literally like bad advice on purpose. That's like the joke. It's not to get kids to do this. It's just to satirize how fucked up television can be by acting like you're trying to get kids to do this, if that makes any sense. And you know, like just my opinion, like I saw frog baseball when I was a kid. It didn't make me want to go hit my friend in the head with a baseball bat. I had a pretty good idea of what would happen if I did that. And of course some kid went and did it, but it wasn't Beavis and Butthead's fault, obviously. I don't think I even need to say that. If it wasn't this, that kid would have done something else. He was just stupid. So like, you know, I feel like society knows that now. So I'm not sure why MTV, like the only reason I get that notion is because on the release, usually, you know, if a company owns something, they're gonna put their logo on this shit. And there is no MTV logo to be seen on this release. It's really weird. I mean, MTV is on the disc, like in the actual show, but nowhere on the outside packaging. And you know, I'm sure if you look on like MTV's YouTube page or website, there's no mention of this. So they don't seem to want to like own it. So maybe it'll just end up like on Tubi or something. I kind of feel like I'm rambling. I'm sorry if I am. But yeah, I just think if you're a fan of like, especially Freaked, I mean, through my extensive research of reading the back of this was like the thing that got Freaked greenlit by somebody. So it is like the actual precursor to Freaked. So if you're a fan of Freaked or just that whole like early 90s MTV aesthetic, like Beavis and Butthead, Liquid Television, if you're into like Adult Swim or like Kids in the Hall, all of that kind of stuff, like I feel like you kind of need to see this. And I think it's a shame that it didn't get more seasons because it feels like there was a lot of potential there and it was doing shit that people weren't doing yet. So yeah, hopefully this video brings a little bit of awareness about it because I think it deserves to be seen. There's a lot of good shit in here. But yeah, that's it. Hope you got something out of it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And until next time. Shirts. We all wear them and you can get them just about anywhere. But let's be honest, most of them are lazy, overpriced, or just not made for us. That's why Retro Crypt is proud to announce Crypt Drip. Made specifically with the subhumanoid in mind, we've developed one of the finest t-shirts on the market. They feature unique and original designs, usually hand-drawn by me, and never using AI. And they are printed on what is, in my opinion, the best t-shirt money can buy. They don't shrink, they barely fade, they're soft and comfy, and honestly only get better with age. And most importantly, they're priced at only $19.99. So while we can't stop them from sitting in their ivory towers pumping out low-effort shirts at exorbitant prices, what we can do is try to carve out a space for ourselves with products for us at prices that don't leave a bad taste in our mouth. And this is my attempt to do just that. So go to retrocryptco.com, get hooked up, and help keep Retro Crypt the world's #1 purveyor of subhumanoid lifestyle products.